up to you.
Well, we'll just start it.
Just-
Okay, here we go. And welcome to Stand Up Explained. I am one of the hosts on this show, Brant Tobler, and my co-host Andrew Slater is here. Hello, Andrew.
What's up, Brant? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I was about to say I'm not doing good.
That's the standard answer right now. I'm not great. It's not good.
I'm focused on the theme of today's episode, and today's episode is called "What Happens When You Bomb." Have you ever bombed? We might as well start with that.
I mean, of course. That's the number one giveaway that you suck as a comedian is if you say you've never bombed, right? Is there any bigger red flag in the world? And yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've ever bombed.
It just means you haven't performed, probably. For me,
or that you don't know, or that you have no self-awareness of what bombing is. Because I know plenty of comics who bomb and then they come off stage and like they've just no concept of what just happened.
Which is why they should quit.
I wish I had that confidence. I wish I had that, where you could just walk through life and just think everything was great all the time.
Well, I know a lot of people say they bomb on their very first time. What about when was the first time you bombed?
Yeah, my first time I bombed, for sure. And I knew it too. It wasn't like there was no room for interpretation. It was so bad. But it wasn't even this is a whole different conversation, but it wasn't even a real comedy club. It was like a coffee shop. So it was like, and they weren't used to having comedians, so it was just a disaster from the get-go. I mean, I was bad, they were bad, it was a bad place. The whole thing was bad.
Well, we'll get to that down the road, some of the random places you'll end up performing. But yeah, I was fortunate the first time I did not bomb the first time, but that's just because I was prepared. And by prepared just means I chickened out so many times that I was actually prepared kind of by default. So I didn't bomb until the second time because I did so good the first time. I thought I was very good. And
did you have the audience stacked?
Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that helps too.
Well, yeah. So who knows if I mean, my material was probably bombing, but my friends, there's probably my first time, there's probably 15, 16 people in the room, and I'd say 12 of them I brought. So it was, and the other like 4 comedians in the room were happy that I brought an audience. So everybody was kind of on my side. So now looking back on it, I guess I probably deserved to bomb, but I did stack the deck a little bit. But speaking of like bombing, and I think, when I was thinking about this episode, like I said, I was prepared my first time only because I chickened out so many times. But I'm curious what you think. I think the times that I bomb, or what usually happens when I do bomb is when I'm not prepared.
Yeah. So, I think not preparing is definitely can lead to bombing. Being like too drunk can lead to bomb. There's a lot of ways it can go that you can lead to bomb when it's your fault, but there are a lot of ways to bomb where it's just things you can't control at all too. Sometimes sometimes it really is the crowd's fault, but you're still bomb. I mean, to me, bombing, it's like, it's just the reality. It's like what happens. Like like if you're a soldier out in war, you either get shot or you don't. Now, sometimes you get shot. It was your fault. You were in the wrong place. You forgot your gun. I don't know, whatever, right? But sometimes it was somebody else's fault. Like they told you to go there, you went, and then you got massacred, and that happens sometimes too. So I think the bombing is just what happens. But then to get to the question, like the core question was like, what happens when you bomb? Really, nothing. Like that's the good news. Like when you bomb, you get done with it and you realize like, oh, I'm still here. That was like unpleasant for everyone, but there'll be another show tomorrow, and it's amazing how quickly you can get over it.
Yeah, in a way, I would say you just want to get that first bomb out of the way. I mean, the first maybe 5 or 10 is, I think, for me personally, the first, I thought it was way more important than it was, but then I realized, oh, it doesn't matter. Eventually,
Well, and that's the flip side of that coin is like what happens when you kill? Well, nothing really either there. Like you think it's so important, like it's if I kill this I'll become famous, and if I bomb I'll never work again. It's like neither of those are true, you know? It's like Major League Baseball, you know? It's like we got 365 or whatever, 162 games of this, and you're up 5 times a game, and one hit or one strikeout in the grand scheme of things isn't going to put you in the Hall of Fame, you know? So it's like the accumulation of these over. And if you're bombing every time, then it's time to do some analysis.
Yeah.
But like the ones, you know, everyone's scared of like that really bad bomb. Sometimes I remember like, this probably happens to you all the time, but like bookers or audience members, if the show is perceived to be bad or whatever they think, like somebody was heckling or whatever, and they feel like you bombed, they'll come up and like say they're sorry, or they're like, oh man, that was rough, you know, I could never do that, that was hard. And I was like, you don't understand, I've already done I always tell people, I've already done the 5 worst shows I'm ever going to do. Nobody's ever going to top them. Like it makes you invincible in a way, you know, so it's kind of a good thing to get those under your belt.
Well, yeah, we'll get to that in a second because I do want to hear your worst bomb story. But I think that's a good point you point out. A lot of people don't ever talk about, but really the difference between bombing and doing good is just kind of the way you feel. Neither of them really. I mean,
right.
When you're starting out your career, and it's sad to say, but if you bomb or you crush, either way, you'll walk by the comics in the room that were looking at their phones the whole time, not paying attention, and they'll all be
right.
like,
the key is to get better, right? Like bombing and crushing is the result, and that ultimately you want to crush every time. Of course, who wouldn't? It's way more fun, and you feel good, and people will give you more compliments, all that stuff, and it's what's going to make you a good comedian, get you paid. But like ultimately you got to get better, because if you kill and you're not improving, then eventually you're going to stop killing and you're going to bomb every time. Or if you bomb and you don't learn anything from it, that's bad too, right? So bombing sucks, it's not fun, but that's not like, I wouldn't say it's like the most important thing. And if you do it once in a while, it hurt. The first time it hurts probably worse than like the 10th or the 50th time, but it's not like it shouldn't break you, you know?
I'll tell you what, it gives me a little life now, because it brings me back to like, and it's just a good reminder. I don't know if this happens to you, but I believe in some weird way that there's these comedy gods out there. And anytime I ever feel like I'm really good, I can just, I just eat it. Like if I walk out of a place like, oh man, I am really good, no matter what it seems like, the next time, the comedy gods will just humble you. And over time, you know, I've learned to embrace the bomb. Like, sometimes it gives me life. Like, because I think sometimes for me, I end up doing the same material way too much, and it's just a reminder of like, oh, you got to always keep writing and keep working on stuff. So in a weird way, I would sometimes rather bomb with new stuff because I know that I'm taking chances instead of just go crush with tried and true stuff that I am just in cruise control up there anyway.
Yeah, and like sometimes it's like if you can separate. I think this takes years to get to this point, like where you really don't, because you just understand. You can do the math after a while. You go, oh well, there's this many people in the room, and they were here to see so and so, and I'm on the show really late, and you know the lighting's bad, the sound sucks, they're really drunk. Like you just know all the stats against you. And so you really can take your own ego out of it sometimes. And then it's just, you're up there and you're bombing, and it's just kind of fascinating sometimes. Like you're like, wow, they just, you know, the least favorite thing is like when a drunk table is like, what are you even talking about? That's my favorite. Not just what are you talking about, what are you even talking about? Well, I was thinking about that yesterday.
So that's funny that you said that, because I wrote down I think, and I'm curious what you think. There's 3 different kinds of bombing that I kind of came up with. The worst one is the one that everyone's scared of, I think, is you very rarely see, is just getting booed off stage. Like, yeah,
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
That's more maybe just in the urban comedy scene. Like in some black rooms, I've seen it happen, but that was still a while ago. But in this day and age, everybody's so nice. And I think that's the question I get all the time. Hey, what if you get booed off stage? I'm like, That doesn't really happen.
No one has the balls. It's like they're not bringing tomatoes. That's kind of old fashioned.
So for those of you watching, you can get rid of that one. And that one wouldn't even be that bad to me. So the other two I have is like, sometimes you bomb when it's quiet and you just have silence. Now, to me, that's still bombing. But what I've learned to take from it is, okay, they like you. They're listening. You're just not good. What you're saying is just not good. Because I think that's, and then the third bomb I think is the worst is when you're performing and they're just talking.
Yeah.
That means they don't even like you. They don't even care about what you're saying.
Right. And it's the hardest thing to combat.
Yeah.
Because if they're heckling you, or let's say they're the first one, they're booing you. If someone boos you, you're going to get so many other people on your side immediately that you're going to be able to get out of it really easy and probably turn the tide. But if they're just talking to each other, you can't fight it. I mean, there's just nothing you can do because you look like a maniac yelling at them because the other people can't hear them talking to each other, so you're just dead.
Yeah, which is inevitably what happens. That I'm definitely guilty of this. When people are talking through my set, so then sometimes I would yell at them and then they would stop for like 2 minutes and then they would just go, oh, we still don't care what he still sucks. Let's just go back to talking. So,
chance number 2 is just
in a weird way. I think for, a young comic or people that ask me about bombing, the two biggest fears they have are the booing and the silence, which aren't really that bad.
Right.
What hurts me the most is when I'm just trying so hard and they could care less. And they're just, okay, you talk louder, our table will just talk louder. And that's the one that hurts.
And that's also the most common one. I think, for sure. The number 3 happens way more than number 1 and number 2. I mean, because if you're any good and they're listening and even if you're trying new stuff, you'll eventually just go back to the old stuff if they're still paying attention, and then they'll laugh, if they're usually. So it's number 2 is kind of rare. Number 1's almost never happens, but number 3 is like the number 1 culprit. And like you said, sometimes it's your fault and sometimes it's their fault, but it doesn't change it. It's still the result is that it sucks.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that on other episodes of when that really happens is eventually you'll get into what we call like combat comedy, or just when you're doing a show in places where people aren't expecting a show. Those are the times when you'll bomb the most, which is exactly what we're talking about here, where you'll just show up at a bar that maybe there's a flyer up or maybe there's not, but there'll just be people having an office party of 15 people, maybe 10 feet from the stage. And all of a sudden someone's like, okay, we're starting comedy in this office.
Right. But it does. I try to think about that too now, because it's really, it's like, I've been doing these virtual shows now with all the things, and it's gives you every time that happens. And I think about it in the past, that used to make me so scared, is when you'd show up and the room's just set up for you to bomb. Like it's just whatever it's a private show, or it's in a horrible location, or people don't know there's going to be comedy. It's a surprise, whatever. And you're going to bomb and it. And that used to really scare me. But now every time that happens, it builds one more layer of invincibility. It's like one more shield to just, now I really feel like there's no scenario where I would be, it's like, let's go, whatever, you do your best, but like, it doesn't, you eventually become invincible to it, I think.
Yeah. Which I think is something we'll talk about on this podcast a lot, is just the repetition of that's how your jokes get better. That's how you're ready for anything that can happen, which we'll also talk about, just the crazy stuff that'll happen on and off stage. But I agree with you with the bombing. You just get tougher and tougher and tougher, and then
you're dead inside. You can't kill what's already dead or whatever. Like it really is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like and I'm sure you get the same question, but that's what everyone's always worried about is the bombing. And if we could be honest, it's not gonna kill you.
No,
it's not gonna end up on the internet, or first of all, no one cares really except for you.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said, everyone's scared. It's going to be like a legendary thing, but you'd be so lucky if you bombed so bad it was like a story. Those are the best.
Yeah.
and you'll be able to tell that story the rest of your life. Most of the time, it's the indifference that's really, like you said, it just kills you that they don't give a shit. Like nobody cares. And they're just they'd rather show each other YouTube videos. Like I've literally been in shows where people are watching like funny videos. And you're like, you paid money. You came to see this. This was the real life video. You wanted to see it. And they're like, nah, it's not as good as, Kermit the Frog throwing up or whatever.
What's your, of all the bombs, is there one that sticks out, the worst one you've ever had?
Well, there's two that they're kind of on both ends of the spectrum because this gets, so the first one I'll say is like the less extreme one, but it's the most hurtful. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of what you're saying. It's like the more they're trying to like it, but they still don't, the more it hurts.
Yeah.
Right. So I did a casino, and casinos are notorious bad because it's a free show, and people can come in and out as they please. And it's a big venue, and there's this couple in the back, and I'm bombing, but it's mostly the silence one, and part of that's the room, and part of but it's also just they didn't like, I was too young for them and everything. So I'm like 20 minutes in, and I'm just dying for any interaction at all. And so I hear there's an older couple in the back, and I hear this old guy grumble something, I go, oh, what was that? Because I couldn't hear what he said. And he's got his arms crossed. And he's just like, we're not enjoying the show. He says super loud. And then I go, oh, man. And I try to I think everybody else is going to be on my side, and they're kind of like, wow, that was a little much. And then I look to his wife. He's got this little old lady wife, and she's super sweet looking and I go to her for some reinforcement. And she's just like, no, we're not. They were so mad. But that hurts more than them telling me to fuck you or whatever, because they really were trying. They sat through 20 minutes. They were trying. They were listening. And then I'm the one who asked them what was wrong. And he told me.
That was a full bad Yelp review.
Yeah, no, he was clear. He was concise. He didn't use profanity. I mean, it was there's nothing I would really say.
What mark in your act were you? How far into your set were you there?
I mean, I think I was middling, if I can remember. So I was probably about 20 minutes in with 10 to go.
Oh.
Yeah. And they picked up a little bit. After that, it's like I said, I was just looking for any sort of spark, and at least that people were interested. And I think I got a little sympathy from some people, but yeah, it was a brutal cell phone for me to go ask. You usually don't want to ask somebody what's wrong in your show. Sometimes it doesn't give you the good answer. But then, so that's one level of the extreme. And then the other ones, these just sometimes shows are just so horrible, and I always find Orange County, we used to live in LA, both of us used to live in LA for a long time, and Orange County, south of LA, on the beach crowd, all those crowds, from Huntington Beach down south to damn near just before you get to San Diego, all those are the worst crowds in America, I find. I don't know what it is, some combination of wealth and just arrogance, but then also not super smart. There's something going on there. And I hate them all. And then, so I did one, it was Grant Cotter's gig or something. And it's just, I was on last, and these people were so drunk, and they were slowly, that's another thing that happens. If you do a bar show, people can just leave. If they haven't paid for the show, they can just get up and go. So it starts with 50 people in the room. Then the second comic's on, there's 40, then 30. And by the time I get up, there's 7 people, and they're the drunkest, all these white wine drinking lady drunks. There's the only table left. And I'm just eating it, bombing. And finally, this lady's bored. They're talking to each other, just like you were saying, and I'm trying to keep them engaged and do my time. And one of this ladies just says, show us your dick. That's what she said. I go, and I was just so thrown, and I was just mailing it in too at that point. I wasn't even trying to get their attention anymore, but she just yelled. And I was like, why? That's what I said. I was honestly perplexed. I was like, why would I, that's not part of the act. And she said, well, you're not funny, so you might as well show us your dick. I was like, well, you got me there. I don't know. I guess that's pretty sound logic. So,
yeah.
And then I got into a big argument, then it was like, it's just, you can't reason with drunk people after a while and go back and forth. And then I'm like, who am I even doing this for? There's nobody else in this room that could be enjoying this interaction that's not you. And I don't care if you enjoy it at this point. So it's really, you have to come to terms with it and then just eat it the rest of your time and go get your money and get out of there.
Get your money. Yeah, I've had one that we didn't really talk about on here that more established comedians and what you young comedians can look forward to is what they call the corporate gigs.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I was doing a corporate gig is usually for a lot of money, like $1,000 or we're gonna do a podcast about what this really pays. It's gonna really blow your guys' mind. But to us, $1,000 is a lot of money. And I was doing a corporate up in like Vail or Aspen, one of these ski towns for a rich parents daycare. I mean, just disaster. So it's in this private like theater room, and I'm about 10 minutes into my set. And I finished this story about rescuing a cat, like a pretty sweet story. And this lady, maybe 10 rows back, dead center, everybody laughs. The story goes good. And then it comes to like silence. I'm about to start my next joke. And this lady just goes, "You're a fucking douche." And I was like, just out of nowhere. And I'm like, what? And she goes, "You heard me. You're a fucking douche." And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I'm supposed to do, I think I was supposed to do an hour. So I have 50 more. But then the thing is like that. And then I just ate it so then I would, and we'll get into this in another episode too about dealing with hecklers. There's a big difference what you can say to a man and a woman, which I learned the hard way a couple times. So I couldn't really go at this lady, and then I didn't give my best performance because I was so mad at this lady for saying that when I didn't even deserve it. Like
right.
If I'd have done something like edgy or dirty or dark or something, I've had people.
You did a story about rescuing a cat.
And she was
like the least controversial act possible.
Oh,
but
I ate it.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say that that's something we didn't talk about too, but like there's a calculus too that you make where how much you're getting paid versus, so like a lot of times you do bomb on the highest paying gigs because they're, like you said, corporate gigs, any private gig. They don't normally do comedy, but they're going to bring in a comic for their company or school or whatever. There's a high chance, or colleges, there's a higher risk of bombing on all those gigs, but they also pay a lot more. So there's a little bit of guilt bombing when you're making the most money. Meanwhile, you go to a comedy club for pennies and you're more likely to kill. So it's a weird thing you have to change in your mind, and you have to go, no, this is harder. That's why it's paying more.
Yeah.
And if I bomb, I don't have to feel guilty about bombing. That's something you have to kind of teach yourself too.
Well, it's funny you just said that because that made me think of this. You hate bombing when you start, but if you can get through those first bombs, eventually you'll look forward to bombing because you get a bomb for a lot of money that'll pay your rent and your phone.
And it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to bomb when that check is coming.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, I never thought about that till just now, but yeah, eventually you work hard at not bombing in the beginning so you could eventually bomb for a lot of money at corporate and college.
Make a whole career out of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that makes me think about, I had an probably the worst bar bomb story I had was I was doing a show in Rawlins, Wyoming, which I'm sure nobody knows where it's at, but I show up, and this will happen to you in your career, which you're going to bomb. You show up and they don't even know there's supposed to be a show. They're like, I got there. I was like, hey, there's supposed to be a show at 8:00, and it's like 7:30. They're like, there is? Like, what? So they had nothing set up, no stage, nothing. So I needed my $100. So I was like, I'm going to do they're like, you can do the show, I guess. So they had no microphone. They gave me like a secretary microphone. Like a Britney Spears would on stage or something like
you're going to do cartwheels and stuff.
Yeah. And then they're just like, and the bar's shaped like a horseshoe, and they're like, they just hand it to me and they turn it on and they're like, go. And I'm like, and I just walked around this bar just eating it. and I knew like whoever got me the gig, I was supposed to do 45 minutes. So I did 44.50 seconds and said, thank you, good night. And, but it just, the worst part about it was the people didn't want me there. And so I was, trying to be funny, but then the mic would also cut out a bunch. So I just bombed so bad.
God, yeah. Well, and then that's funny too about bombing is the time. So it's like you'd think if everyone's having a bad time and you're not enjoying it and they're not enjoying it, this is just ruining everyone's evening. Wouldn't we all just say, okay, we tried it, it's not working, here's your $100 and go. But sometimes there's these spiteful bookers or venue owners who go, no, I paid for the 45 minutes. I want all 45 minutes. I want you to go up there and be miserable and have everyone else be miserable because I paid. Because I did a gig one time. I did like a Hooters casino with my buddy Owen Straw in Seattle, and we showed up and there was literally no people there, like not in where the showroom was. I'm not saying like 4 or 5, literally 0 customers, right, had come to the show. So we were like, okay, what are we doing? We cancel it, and they're like, yeah, let's just cancel it. And Owen was like, well, where do we get paid? Or who's paying us? It's like, well, we're canceling it. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. We came here. That's the hard part, is getting here. We weren't going to come to Hooters Casino on our own,
Yeah.
So they're like, well, we're not going to pay you to not do comedy. It's like, she's like, well, let me talk to my manager. She talks to her manager, comes back, and they're like, all right, do the show. If you want to get paid, you got to do the show. And we're like, well, there's nobody out there. And they're like, no, do the show. So we did the show to just the pissed off bartender and the servers who had to stay there in case someone came in. And then before the show started, they're like, do you want us to turn off the TV? Was on the Mariners game. They're like, do you want us to turn off the TV? I was like, no, leave the game on. I want to watch something while I do this. There's I got to be entertained somehow. I'm just reciting my act to nobody. So yeah, sometimes I never understood that, why this isn't fun for anybody. You think they just want you to cut it short, but they want to get their money's worth or something.
Yeah, and just that story brings me such joy, and that just made me think too. When you're starting out, you're worried about bombing, but I tell you what, over time, that's how you're going to bond with other comedians, because no one wants to hear. I don't want to hear if you were like, oh, this one time I killed. No one wants to hear that.
Right.
Those comics that want to brag about. I always say if you see whoever your favorite comic is, he'll never tell you how good he did that night, but they'll tell you bombing stories. And I've, that's been a way to bomb or bond with a lot of comedians, is you're sitting around like this and then everyone starts telling their bombing stories. And then by the end, you've developed some friendship. So in a weird way, I think the fear of bombing, the more we talk about it, I'm like, it's actually a good part of this whole business. And I will say this too, because a lot of people I have seen bomb 1 or 2 times and then they're gone, which is great too.
Yeah, I mean that it is. It's like, I guess it's that thing. It like tests you or something, or you got to want it badly enough to make it through these moments of unpleasantness, and they're pretty unpleasant. I mean, when it's happening, it's not fun when it's happening. But just get back to where we started at the beginning. The truth is, what happens when you bomb is nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say you add a layer of self-defense to where eventually you're going to become invincible to it. And ultimately, you go to the next show. And it's like, and people overrate what immediately happens after each show. They think of that as being the be all end all. And it's really not about that. It's like the accumulation of a million shows. Yeah.
And just thinking about that too, is like, you do hear all the bombing stories, but that's because that's what people want to hear. I would always tell my girlfriend, like, if a train crashes, you want to hear that story. When the train runs smoothly every time, or the train gets there 10 minutes early, no one cares about those stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, you'll hear more bombing stories when you are looking to get into comedy, but in the long run, you'll survive. It feels like any other bad day at work. You just
yeah, it's a little frustrating, but it gets easier every time.
Yeah, like I know. So after you bomb, I guess, I mean, it's the same thing. It depends where you're at. But for me, when I was first bombing, I would just get in my car and then, and then just throw on some music and think about it. And I think it was actually, I mean, I guess this is an obvious point, but it's better for me when I bombed, because then I thought about what I needed to do better, what I needed to change. When I kill, the adrenaline of killing, I didn't, after killing, I never work on my act. I just fly. I'm
No,
like
that's yeah. It's just like a killing. It's just like a shot of heroin. You know, it's just like shooting up, and then you feel great, euphoric for a while, and then that wears off, and then you go, "What does anything matter anyway?" You know, and then you go right back down to zero. But when you bomb, it sticks with you, and yeah, you do. You rethink your whole act. You rethink your whole. You know, especially if the show was good and you just bombed. That's a tough one too. And when the lineup's great, the crowd's great, and you just kind of get buried.
Yeah.
As in the comic in front of you was so good that you just couldn't follow them. And the audience was like, we want that last person back. You know, they were way better than you. Like that makes you rethink your whole act and career and instincts and everything.
That's a different kind of bombing we didn't even talk about. Again, you know, some comics will tell you, oh, if you didn't do good, it's always your fault. It's always your fault. But for instance, what you just said there, we both had to have that happen, especially when we lived in LA. If a big celebrity shows up and goes right up in front of you, I don't care how good you are. Once they see like their hero and then they don't know who you are, some of these times, I mean, some people can get out.
Yeah, but I mean, it just ups the level of difficulty. It's just one more thing. It's like the variables, right? It's like it's one other way it can up your difficulty level, and like that's a really big one. There, and I've seen you know, sometimes people can overcome it, and it's pretty crazy to see it happen. But a lot of times they can't, you know, and they bomb, and that one messes with you more than anything, because you're like, well, they were good, and why can't I, you know, why can't I get those people that love them? Why can't they just transfer? Me, you know, they were listening, they were ready to have more fun, you know, but. But then what you were saying, I guess, to get into this was like, but then that's where you can improve, because you're going to dissect everything you do. You're going to think about what it is you're not doing, where you can get better, and go back to the drawing board a little bit, which is where that's where the growth comes in. So,
well, that talking about what you just said just made me realize your first bomb is like, it's a great bomb to have, because that bomb we're just talking about, when somebody famous or way better than you comes, buries you, that's a different ride home when you're like, can I ever be that good? Can I?
Yep.
That's the harder. When you ask what's a bombing feel like, that bombing is probably the one that hurts the most, when you just see somebody that is much better than you at whatever point you're at in your career, and you're like, oh my God. You know,
well, and there's another kind too. There's another version of that, where there's someone who's you think is not better than you and is not more famous than you, but then they just kill with something you think is inferior, and then you go on and bomb after that. That's a whole nother level. Like, well, then I don't even know what is wrong with the world. You know, the world is not funny and I'm fun, and they're not connecting. That's a whole nother thing that messes with your head, and you just got to get over it. But
yeah. So these are all bombings that you don't have to worry about till you know about.
Right. These are subsets.
This is like just our grief. But if you get to the point we're talking about now, you're a professional comedian or you've learned enough. But I guess just to wrap it up for this episode, what does bombing feel like? I mean, it sucks it's probably like, I don't know, is it bad like any other bad day of work? But it's not going to kill you, the thing.
Right. It's because it's the number one question I think audience members ask, like what happens when you bomb. It's an overrated idea. Like, it happens, it sucks when it's happening, it's not fun, it's a bad day at work, like you said, but it lasts as long as the next show, you know. And that's why it's good to do lots of shows.
And I'll say this, I think what people are most scared of is like your friends, you know, because everybody in the room, other comics, they've all bombed, they're not going to judge you. The wait staff seen people bomb. Nobody really cares, except for the only people that are going to probably talk shit are people that you brought. And I'll say this, the ones that talk shit are the ones that wish they could do it or had the balls to go up there and do it. The only people that are going to talk shit about you bombing, I think, are people that are just scared to go do it themselves, you know, because none of that, like I mean, we talk shit when you bomb, but that's our love language. That means you're one of the comedians. It's not. That's the fun part, is when you bomb. But like your fear of people talking shit about you, you shouldn't worry about it, man. I'm telling you, the ones that's gonna hurt are the people in your life that aren't comedians. But I think most of the time that's jealousy of people. So many people want to do this, at least, and I felt that when I started. A lot of people are like, you can't do it. And the people that talk the most shit would come to me later in life and be like, I really want to do it. I want to try it. I'm like, yeah, I knew that all along, you know?
Well, and that's why you go to open mics, really, because if before you start, no one's ever inspired to do comedy by the people who are great at open mics. They go to open mics looking for the people to bomb, so they can go, oh, I can do that. That's inspiring. Anybody can do it apparently, so I can do that. So they're going to be inspired by you bombing. So
yeah. So if that makes you feel better, yeah, think that your bombing might have made the next Bill Burr or something.
Right. You gave someone the courage to go try it.
Which is so true. And that's a great point. If you are thinking about doing stand-up and you have this question, go to 5 more open mics, and no matter what, you'll see someone and be like, oh, well, at least I won't be that bad.
Exactly. And yeah, there's no, as bad as you think you are, there's someone doing it right now worse. Always. You can't, you may be the best one day, but you're never going to be the worst. The worst is already taken. I don't know who it is, but it's you can't top them.
That's for sure. All right, so that is what happens when you bomb. I hope we answered your questions. If you have any questions, you can hit us up on all social media. I'm at Brant Tobler, BrantTobler. Andrew, where can they find you?
At Andrew Slater, AndrewSleighter.
If you enjoyed the show, just do us a favor and hit the subscribe button. If you're here on YouTube, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or anything, please subscribe, rate, leave a comment. We'll explain why that matters so much down the road, but it just really does. And we hope you enjoyed this, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
See you.